Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki participated today in a video conference of the heads of governments of the Visegrad Group states. He took part in the joint declaration of the V4 leaders, expressing full solidarity with the Czech Republic in relation to the actions of the Russian Federation. The Polish Prime Minister, along with the leaders of the Visegrad Group, condemned yet another act of aggression and violation of international law committed by Russia on European soil.
By the declaration adopted during today's meeting, the Prime Ministers of Poland, Hungary and Slovakia expressed their full solidarity with the Czech Republic, our close partner and neighbor, in relation to the participation of Russian military intelligence agents in the explosion of an ammunition depot in Wałbrzych in 2014. The Prime Ministers condemned this act of aggression by Russia on European soil. However, the broad context of the events of recent weeks was discussed. The actions taken by states so far show how we should respond to such multi-dimensional escalations. I would like to assure you that all the Visegrad Group countries, although they differ in certain matters, are convinced that our security is of key importance and that aggressive actions by Russia cannot be left unanswered. We will act together with the European Union and NATO to convince Russia that attacks on Western democracies and other countries are costly and that these costs will increase.
From today, the restrictions put in place to combat the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic will begin to be loosened in 11 out of the 16 Polish provinces. Hairdressing and beauty salons are now allowed to operate, and pupils from grades 1 to 3 of primary schools started learning in a hybrid model. More decisions about a possible further easing of the restrictions will be announced on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health announced that over 33,000 tests were performed in the last 24 hours, and nearly 3,500 new cases of coronavirus infection were diagnosed.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, more than 2,760,000 coronavirus infections have been diagnosed and almost 65,500 people have died. Over 10 million vaccines have already been administered in Poland. The first dose has been given to more than 765,000 people and the second dose to more than 2.5 million.
The Biedronka grocery chain has allegedly been misleading consumers by labelling foreign fruit and vegetables as Polish products. The Polish Office of Competition and Consumer Protection has taken action and fined Biedronka 60 million zloty, about $13 million. The owner of the Biedronka grocery chain, Jeronimo Martins Polska, said it will be appealing the decision. 35 years ago today, on April the 26th, 1986, the most serious disaster in the history of nuclear power took place in Chernobyl, where the explosion of the nuclear power plant contaminated parts of the territories of today's Ukraine and Belarus. Radioactive substances travelled as far as Scandinavia and Central Europe, including Poland.
35 years ago today, the Chernobyl plant crew switched off the safety systems to test the turbines, leading to the reactor overheating, generating a powerful explosion that sent plumes of radioactive material 2 kilometers into the Earth's atmosphere. It is estimated that 400 times more radioactive materials was projected into the air than when the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. Following the explosion, 134 servicemen were hospitalized with acute radiation sickness, of whom 28 firemen and employees died in the weeks and months after the explosion. An 18-mile radius, known as the exclusion zone, was set up around the reactor, and more than 100,000 people were evacuated from the area. Today, the place is safe to visit for tourists, but remains a point of contention. Those against nuclear energy point to Chernobyl to discourage any form of development in the industry, while nuclear energy proponents argue that even taking into account the Chernobyl explosion, nuclear is still by far the safest way of generating power.
This year's Oscars ceremony took place at the Union Station instead of the Hollywood Dolby Theatre. Many motion picture enthusiasts were not keen on not having the decorations and Oscar statues in Hollywood and the Highland Centre where the Academy Awards have taken place in recent years. The site for the awards had always been an iconic location, and each year thousands of tourists travel long distances to take a picture next to the red carpet and the giant Oscars displayed on Hollywood Blvd during the ceremony. None of this was possible last weekend. However, while some remain optimistic and anticipate the return of the ceremony to Hollywood by the time of its 94th iteration, some believe that Hollywood will never be the same with the iconic theatre still closed. The Union Station, While being itself an equally historic location and the Art Deco landmark of the western United States, chosen this year for its high ceilings and airy interior, is not the traditional venue that Americans connect with the celebration of movies in Hollywood. Malgorzata Schulz was there and asked locals for their opinions on the new Oscars ceremony.
This year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Oscar ceremony looked completely different.
When are we going to reopen Hollywood for real?
Never. It was never open in the first place. It's all
work on it.
tinsel.
Wow.
It was tinsel from day one.
I'll work it out with Alfred.
What do you think? Like, they're not doing it this year.
I mean, I don't see why not. You know, they're already having football games and stadiums open, so might as well.
I think with how everything has changed this last year, it's just one of the changes we have to deal with for this particular year. I have no doubt next year they'll be back here, there'll be the big red carpet, and it'll all go back to normal. So this is just kind of their alternative, and I think it's a good alternative. So, yeah.
Why there is no ceremony this year?
That's because I haven't made a movie in 10 years.
No tourists, very few television stations, and the streets have to be closed, so very different Oscars because of the COVID-19 pandemic. For Poland Daily from Los Angeles, Malgorzata Schulz.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.